Hello, it's Dr. DeBord, and I'm back to talk about stress and health. These videos are intended to be short and helpful to you. I'm sorry if I go through some of the slides rather quickly. It's just intended to help as much as possible. So I'm going to go through about half of what I would have gone through if we had met in person. Anyway, I moved this chapter up because we're dealing with stress and dealing with this crisis. So this is chapter 14 on stress. So we're going to talk a little bit about stats on stress, types of stress, and how we assess it, and then how our bodies respond to stress. This is some new information about college students. I have also uploaded an article, the Dr. Argetti from Lincoln, along with a colleague of hers, Jeannie Edmond from Sacramento Community College, has collected data on Lincoln students and Sacramento students about stress in their lives. And so if you look at overall in the past like 5 or 10 years, stress among college students has just skyrocketed. That's not even considering what's going on right now. Suicide rates are up, depression rates are up, anxiety rates are up. The traditional age college students are under more stress than they've ever been in their lives. And so it's one of the reasons that I think this chapter is important. This is the study I was referring to. You have a link to it on Canvas. It's called Stress and Lincoln Students, something like that. And it looked at primarily African-American students, and almost every student reported at least one severe stressor. Actually, what they found is higher exposure to trauma was associated with lower grades, but if a person reported their symptoms, they actually had higher grades. And the thought that the researchers drew there was that if someone has the ability to share their symptoms and their concerns with someone else, they're getting social support and they're probably coping better. We have 4 major types of stressors. Some argue 3, that the last category is kind of a trash can category. I want to talk mainly about those top 3. First is trauma. So we've talked about PTSD in class several times. Here are some of the major symptoms of PTSD. Having a life-threatening stressor. And again, the most common things are combat, also car accidents and sexual assault. Another symptom that goes along with this is re-experiencing the event. And so that can be flashbacks, that can be night terrors where the whole scene is relived again. Avoidance of anything associated with the trauma, and then increased bodily or physiological arousal. So that can keep one just so amped up that they can't concentrate, they can't sleep. If something startles them, they're just really jumpy. So those are the major symptoms I'll probably ask you about on the quiz on Friday. Another category of major stressors is life changes. And actually, researchers came up with a way of trying to measure this in the overall US population and came up with a whole host of different stressors. This is just some of those they came up with: the death of a spouse, divorce, marital separation and jail term, death of a close family member. So even marriage is a stressor. That's a major life event. It's a major change. What they found is that the more of those things that a person lived through in the past 6 months was associated with being more physically ill, having more colds, more symptoms of the flu, more visits to the doctor, and more depression and anxiety. Another category of stressors that people live through are everyday hassles. I just had to do that in recording this lecture because when I went to record it, I had to restart the computer to update all the Windows features, which was really annoying. And then while I was doing that, I was trying to create a grocery list online so I could pick it up at curbside, and that wasn't working either. That's an everyday hassle, small stuff. And so associated with this crisis, there are a lot of small changes. We're all experiencing a lot of everyday hassles that normally we wouldn't be experiencing right now. Some of the older ones in the past are included in this list. Having too much to do, losing stuff all the time, worrying about money. I know a lot of people have that right now, losing their jobs. Social media, that is common with people comparing themselves to others. And you know that people just post good stuff typically online. So and someone's looking at like, look, all my friends are having a good time. It's like, people are just posting good stuff. People getting too little sleep, being bored. I'm sure that's happening for a lot of people. bad weather. That was happening for me last week, waiting in line for stuff. A lot of people worried about weight and appearance. I would say of all my friends, my family members, and my clients, not a single person I know has not indicated to me that that's something they concern themselves with or worry about. Kids, family, and neighbors and roommates. The other category is just usually job related, people losing their jobs and being paid low, dealing with supervisors or customers. So those are the four major categories. Trauma, and I'm really going to emphasize the first three: trauma and major life changes, and then also daily hassles. Another thing that happens with stress is when we look at a stressor, we have to size it up, or what we call appraise it. You know how you get like a ring appraised? It's like we try to assess and estimate its worth or value. There are two major ways that we can assess or appraise a stressor. One, we can see it as a challenge, something that we'll learn from. Like, oh, I can actually become a better person from this. This will help me get one step closer to graduating or one step closer to getting a job. Things like that. That would be a challenge appraisal. But if we look at it as like, I can't do this. This is gonna kill me. This is gonna do me in. Then that is a threat appraisal. And you can imagine the results of each. Seeing something more as a challenge, like I can do a little piece of this at a time and then knock away at this, is going to end up on a lot better health outcomes than just consistently seeing something as a threat. Here is a path model for how one can assess a stressor. You can see that first, the primary appraisal is a challenge or a threat. If you see it as a challenge, you're going to be able to see that you're going to be able to improve yourself from it. If you see it as a threat, it's like, this is going to, again, hurt me. This is going to be bad. Then you have to come up with another appraisal. What can I do to cope? If you can't come up with any effective means of coping, you are going to have a lot of stress and probably get sick. If you can say, okay, like let's go with doing classes online, transitioning classes online. If your secondary appraisal, if your first appraisal is a threat, and then your second appraisal is like, well, I can reach out to the tutoring services that are available online. I can email or call Dr. DeBord and see if he can help me with this. I can talk to my family members. I can watch the videos. I can look up other YouTube videos. Then you're looking up other effective options, and the threat is going to be lessened, and that's going to be better for you and your overall physical health. Let's see, okay. Oh, this is another way to think about how you assess your academic stressors. If you look at your own class performance, and these are four different ways to think about your performance. Is it due to stable factors that are stable across time, or is it something that varies across time, that's be unstable? And then if you go to these two columns, is my own academic performance due to something in me, or is it something outside of me? And this gives you four different possibilities. My main thing I want to stress here is that this category here, effort, is the best appraisal you can make of academic performance. If you can look at your own academic performance and say it's due to effort, you're saying it's due to something internal and it's unstable over time. It varies with how much effort you put into studying. If, however, you say it's any of these other three, you have less control of those things. And that's going to affect your physical health and psychological health. If you say like, it's my ability and I just can't do this, then typically a person will give up and not perform very well. If you say, oh, the class is just too hard, or the teacher's too difficult, again, you're not going to try any harder. If you think it's luck, I mean, why would you even try if you think it's up to fate? Those three are not very good. Effort is the best way to appraise your own academic performance. Okay, so how do our bodies respond to stress? You can look at this video. It basically talks, it's an animal model for how we are affected as humans. And I think it's pretty good. I said watch starting at 4:01 and starting at 9:45 are two clips I usually showed in class. You guys know what the sympathetic nervous system is. We talked about this with chapter 3. It's a fight or flight or freeze. So basically, you're going to have, remember when you get the sympathetic nervous system activated, your pupils get bigger so you can see everything better. Your heart rate increases, pumping the blood to the muscles so you can fight or flight. You have release of sugar, and your bronchial tubes dilate so you can take in more oxygen. That's one pathway to how your body responds. Another pathway is through the endocrine system. And that includes the hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, which you probably heard about, and your adrenal glands. Now, the main thing I want you to know about this is that the first pathway to stress, the sympathetic nervous system, is fast. The second pathway is slower. And so what happens when the second pathway gets activated, the adrenal glands are eventually release what's called here cortisol hormone. And that is a stress hormone. If you watch that video I just referred to, you'll see how that works in animals. We're human animals, so we also release cortisol when we're stressed. Have you ever had a cortisone shot or known someone who's had a cortisone shot? Usually, I mean, I used to get them for my own allergies. My allergies were so bad, I would get a cortisone shot. That's a synthetic version of cortisol. And what that does is basically, it tells your immune system, stop activating. So that when I inhale pollen and other stuff, normally my immune system would say foreign invader and create a bunch of snot and stuff to attack that because you get white blood cells accumulating that. But if you get a cortisone shot, then your immune system stops responding. And that's what happens with stress over time. If it keeps going, the adrenal glands are going to release cortisol, and that cortisol is going to suppress your immune system. You don't want your immune system suppressed for a very long period of time because that's going to make you more likely to pick up viruses, colds, flus, everything. This is a model of stress. Basically, it's a 3-stage model. I think it's very intuitive. I'd like you to read about it in the book. I don't really want to talk about it. There are 3 stages of stress. Basically, if stress goes on long enough, we get exhausted and we have a breakdown of our body. Okay. Oh, here are some stressors that people listed last semester. Number 1 was school, money, work, and family. Other stressors included failure, being let down, injury. So this is something I used to like to collect in class, but I can't collect it right now. I mean, I actually did ask you about how you're coping on the in-class assignment, but I don't want to talk about that at the moment. What we know when people get stressed, I mean, you know what happens. I mean, you get neck aches, headaches, sometimes back aches, stomach gets all upset. Sometimes, I mean, you break out. These are common symptoms of stress that we see. We know that the more stress people have, again, the more susceptible they are to colds. I did not include this in the slides you have on Canvas, but I just wanted to show you, we have all these fighters in our immune system. I'm not going to test you on these, but we got lymphocytes and macrophages. This is a macrophage right here. It looks like aliens. So on the microscopic level, we have all these parts of our immune system actively trying to fight viruses and foreign invaders all the time. If our immune system gets suppressed because cortisol is being released, these things are less able to do their jobs. You know, stress doesn't cause cancer, but our immune system clears out any what's called free radicals or damaged cells. And if our immune system's suppressed, those free radicals can reproduce and lead to tumors. So it's not that stress causes cancer, it just it suppresses our immune system, which our immune system usually fights things that can turn into cancer. Another major factor, and this is huge because heart disease is the #1 killer among Americans. Stress can lead to heart disease. Basically, you have your body not being able to, in some ways, clean your cardiovascular system as well, and you can get an accumulation of cholesterol and buildup of plaque. One factor that's related to this is what's called a type A personality. And type A personality is usually someone who's really hard-driven, competitive, aggressive. They are sometimes explosive. They're considered like powder kegs. And hostility and anger are the 2 biggest factors. You know someone who just like, you know they're about to blow up like at almost any second. That might be a type A personality. This was a personality style that was discovered by a couple of cardiologists, heart doctors, when they realized that so many of their patients that were having heart attacks ended up falling into this description of a personality called type A. Now, people can be trained to have a type B personality style, and they lower their risk of heart attacks when that happens. Okay, we are going to move on to coping, starting with the lecture that I'm going to give on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So I'm going to end this recording here. This has been about 15 minutes. I hope this has been helpful.